What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host. My name is John, also known as the Martian. And this week, we're going to be breaking down the UFC St. Louis Fight Night going down this weekend from St. Louis, Missouri, headlined by Derrick Lewis versus Rodrigo-Nascimento. 13 fights taking place in St. Louis. And we're going to be breaking down all 13 of those from a betting perspective, giving you my thoughts on the fights, the matchups, the winners, and of course, the best bets to be made for the fights. Last week, we were coming off of a UFC 301 pay-per-view down in Brazil. I would say it was a pretty good week of picks for me. You know, I had some plays to miss, some plays to hit, of course. You know, the misses were the Borjas fight. I was off on there. I took some stabs on the Rufi decision and goes the distance, some stabs on the Petrino goes the distance and his decision as well that didn't come through, and then just some big dog shots as well on Carolina, Craig, and Ihor. Funny enough, I specifically said that there are a lot of big dogs in this card. I think the one not worth taking is Anthony Smith. He was the only real big underdog who won on the entire card, so a bit ironic there, but also had some good stuff come through. Drakkar close money line, oral buys, money line and handicap. I said Brito was the side in that fight as well, and also had Jose Aldo money line, and of course close it out with Pantoja by sub or decision, which came through. So a lot of the big plus money plays I gave did not come through, but all of like the slight favorites, slight dogs, I think did hit for the most part. So just a slightly above average week last week, but we're not going to spend too much time recapping everything. I thought it was a fun event. You know, always fun to be in front of a live crowd. No fight of the night given. Pretty strange there. I mean, I think the main event was a pretty easy choice for fight of the night. You know, a 3-2 title fight, back and forth, competitive stuff. I mean, each round was back and forth and competitive, and I think Toja won the first, Urkeg won the second, Toja won the third, Urkeg won the fourth. I mean, they literally alternated rounds, and it was a good competitive title fight, and they still didn't give it fight of the night. I'm not sure what that's about there, but those guys got robbed a little bit. But overall, solid event, and let's keep things rolling into this week. We are recording solo, and we're doing a straight record, you know, straight through. Once upon a time, years back, I used to, you know, maybe do one fight at a time. Sometimes I would even, you know, do multiple cuts per fight because I didn't really have my thoughts together or anything like that. But now we're just doing a stream of consciousness, as they say. So we're going to be talking here for a good 30 minutes straight, unless something unforsaken occurs. But we're going to start things off in the first fight of the night in the women's flyweight division. JJ Aldrich, Veronica Hardy, also known as Veronica Macedo once upon a time. The odds for this one have Hardy as the slight favorite at minus 141, with JJ Aldrich coming back as the plus 121 underdog. And I have a side in this fight. It is JJ Aldrich. Big fan of JJ Aldrich. Had a magnificent breakdown of her last fight. Some of my finest work. And something I stressed in that fight is, you know, the uglier woman in MMA, in women's MMA, is very likely the winner of the fight. And it is pretty clear who is the uglier woman of the two in this fight. You know, Veronica, nice, cute little lady there, married to Dan Hardy, of course. And then JJ Aldrich just gets punched in the face for a living, and you can tell. And I just think she's the better fighter, man. I really do think that, and I'm certain that she's fought and beaten the better competition of the two. Veronica Hardy took a long layoff after her loss to Bia Malecki, of all people, and has bounced back with some wins over, you know, Jamie Lynn Horth and Juliana Miller, just two low-level fighters. And I think JJ Aldrich is a pretty big step up from those two women. And the women that JJ Aldrich has been fighting and beating lately, I think are a tier above Veronica Hardy. I mean, JJ Aldrich has a unanimous decision win over Jillian Robertson. Jillian is a very good functional women's MMA fighter who takes down a lot of women and is a really good grappler on top. And JJ shut her down, didn't let her get any takedowns going. And I just going with the experience of JJ Aldrich here, man. I think she's going to land the better strikes, keep the fight on the feet. And a lot of Hardy's success lately have been like these blitzing combinations. She's actually been rocking a lot of women and hitting them with some good good shots, and she's not bad in the clinch either, but I just think that JJ has a step ahead in all realms here. I think her takedown defense will be good enough to keep it standing, and I just trust JJ a little bit more on the feet at distance and in the clinch, and I think she's going to use that experience advantage to get her a decision win here. JJ should be a little bit bigger as well, I believe. Not much, 3 inches of reach, 1 inch of height, but they're both southpaws. That's an interesting thing going on here. I don't think JJ has fought a remarkable lack of southpaws, and I doubt Hardy has fought that many either. So I'm interested to see how that lines up here. And I'm going with JJ Aldrich money line, and obviously she's going to win by decision, but just stick with the money line. I like her for a 1 to 1.5 unit bet here. We're moving on to the welterweight division. Gooden-Jousset taking on Jared Gooden, the Night Train. An affiliate of Best Fight Picks, if you guys are familiar. The odds for this one have Jousset minus 230, Gooden plus 195. So I actually like Jared Gooden more than I used to. When he first came to the UFC, he wasn't very good, and it's not like he's improved a whole lot, but I mean, he stepped up. He took the Carlston Harris fight on short notice. He got his ass kicked in that one, missed weight by 7 pounds on short notice there, but in his last fight, he sprung a pretty decent upset against Wellington Turman, submitting him of all things. The black belt Wellington Turman, he rocked him and submitted him with a rear naked choke. So he's a fun action fighter. I think Jared Gooden is just a good guy to throw in there against a striker to produce an exciting fight, and that's what Kevin Jousset is. He's a very sharp striker. I really like what I see from this guy. I think he's got real good eye for exchanges. His strikes are sharp, and he's coming off of a nice win over Keenan Song. Slightly competitive fight early on there, but he really pulled away late in that one. And I think something similar happens here where Gooden, when he's fresh, I think he's going to, compete early on. I think these guys are going to strike with one another, and Gooden is pretty durable. And he's gotten knocked out a few times regionally. Impa knocked him out. He got knocked out in less than 60 seconds in, I think, LFA or something a few years back as well. It was Titan FC. But I think the guy is actually fairly durable if he can absorb those first few shots. So I think it's going to be a close round one, but then in the second and third round, Jousset's going to pull away just by being the sharper, more seasoned striker of the two. And I think I do have a bet on this fight. Kevin Jousset by round 3 or by decision, plus 110. I think decision is the most likely because I'm not super impressed with Jousset's finishing ability, and it's not because sometimes he just he coasts in there. He fights a little smart. He fights to a game plan, and he's very calculated. And I think that's what he's going to do here. He's going to recognize that Gooden has some power in his hands, respect him, and just jab and low kick his way to a 30-27 or something here. So I like that round 3 by decision. That's plus 110 on FanDuel. I like that for about a unit bet. And we're moving on to the flyweight division. Jake Hadley taking on Charles Johnson here. Odds for this one have Jake Hadley minus 141, Charles Johnson plus 121. Good fight here. I think that this is actually a decent matchup for Charles Johnson, who I've criticized a little bit in his recent run. He came into the UFC. I really liked him, but I think he really dropped the ball once he got to the UFC. He just wasn't urgent enough in these 3-round fights. He fought a few 5-round fights in the LFA, and then he got to the UFC and he started, being in 3-round fights, and they were really close. I mean, the Ode Osborne, the Zolgas Zhumagulov fight, razor close fights. And, one went his way, one didn't. And then he, used a little bit of an excuse, and he said, I'm used to these 5-round fights. I need to, start quicker. And that really hasn't been the case. And he really struggles with wrestlers, right? Cody Durden out-wrestled him badly. Mokaev out-wrestled him badly. Estevan out-wrestled him in the first 2 rounds. But Jake Hadley is not a good offensive wrestler. I'm pretty certain of that. He's mostly just a boxer, a southpaw boxer who likes throwing straight punches, straight left to the body, left kick to the body a little bit, but he's very predictable on the feet. If you watch this guy strike, he has a clear pattern of strikes that he throws, and I think that Charles Johnson is a little bit more of a dynamic striker, and I think he's much more experienced as well. So Jake Hadley in that last fight against Cody Durden, I just thought he looked terrible in all realms of the fight. And Cody Durden is a tough matchup. He's a better fighter than he gets credit for. But I just didn't think anything Jake did there was good, man. I thought his takedown defense looked just as bad as it did in the Lewis-Nascimento fight. And His cardio didn't particularly impress me, his strike selection, and Cody Durden actually was getting the better of the striking exchanges on the feet there. So one problem about Charles is that he is a slow starter. He typically drops round one. Even in his last fight where he came back to rally against Azat Maksum, got hurt and nearly finished in the first round there. And I think, he's had, I believe, 7 UFC fights. I think he's lost round one in like 6 of them. So the only one he didn't was the Jimmy Flick fight. So this guy is just a slow starter. So I do think this is a good matchup for Charles Johnson, and he is going to be my pick to win the fight by decision. I would knock a play on him before the fight at plus money, but I'm going to be waiting for the live line here, seeing how Charles is doing. Wait for him to shake off the cobwebs a little bit. Maybe wait for Jake to have a moment of success, and then hopefully enter in on a bigger live number on Charles Johnson. But I do think he is inevitably winning the fight. And the most bet prop that people have been betting the past few years is Charles Johnson round 3. Some motherfuckers have been betting this shit every single fight. It really hasn't come close to winning. I think he had a little bit of a guillotine in the Maksum fight. He typically comes on strong in the third round. He does have very good cardio, but he just isn't a good finisher, so I'm not going to be donating on that. I hope it finally comes home at some point. It's like plus 2,000 every fight, and it's 0 for 7 so far. So as long as it hits once in the next 12 fights, the people will be profitable. Martingaling that one. So the next fight is in the welterweight division. Trey Waters taking on Billy Goff. Banger of a fight here. Odds for this one have Trey Waters minus 160, Billy Goff plus 140. And I've got another side here. It is Billy Goff money line. And some people might think that's surprising. Trey Waters 7 inches taller than Billy Goff here. Billy Goff is a little bit of a slow starter as well. He likes to get hit early on, and then he shifts into second gear once he gets hit. And we've seen that a few times now. The fucking Contender Series fight, this guy gets head kicked in the side of the head 7 seconds in, and he's on his ass. And the next thing you know, 2 minutes later, he's taking it to the Israeli Shimansky or something like that. And Billy Goff ends up finishing him just a few minutes later. Same with the Kinoshita fight. Just he puts a pace on guys, and he pressures you, and he gets inside, and he has good power in his hands, mixes it up to the head and body well. And Trey Waters, he's just a very basic tall fighter. He throws a lot of straight punches. He tries to act like he's a better boxer than he is, but I can just tell that this guy's defense is gonna unravel. He fought Josh Quinlan, who was a total and complete bum, and who he got in the UFC. He was like 6-0 or something. And this guy just doesn't pressure. He doesn't put up strikes. He's one of the most lazy fighters I've ever seen in the UFC. So Trey Waters, outboxed him easily with his length to a 30-27 as a big short notice underdog there. And I think that's kind of diluting people's confidence a little bit about Trey Waters here. This guy's not a good grappler as well. Remember, he got Von Flued by Bonfim, which is just an embarrassing submission to get caught with, especially at the lighter weight classes, man. Jeez. Billy Goff isn't reliable to mix in takedowns, but I think if he wants to, he can hit him here. And on the feet, it's just going to be Waters, retreating a lot and keeping his head on a straight line and leaning back with this, big long frame. And Billy Goff is going to be getting inside on them, throwing punches, and either killing or be killed here. So I think this one is ended by finish. I think it's going to be a knockout for either guy, probably in the first 2 rounds, honestly. And I think it's going to be Billy Goff. I think it's going to be the pressure and getting inside on Waters. And I just think Waters, his whole defense and his whole fighting style is going to collapse when he's put on the back foot, he's pressured, and he's hit with some hard shots, which is what Billy Goff is going to do. So Billy's going to fight for your money here, get inside, and hopefully knock this guy out. I like Billy Goff money line for 1 to 1.5 units as well here. And I do think the fight finishes, as I mentioned, but I haven't bet an angle on that one for the fight to finish under 2.5, juiced at minus 165. I think that's about accurate. So no play on that. Maybe you'll add a little Goff inside the distance as well. But I like Goff money line here for a decent bet. We're moving on to the women's strawweight division. Tabitha Ricci, Tecia-Torres, a.k.a. Tisha Pennington now. The odds for this one have Ricci minus 142, Tecia-Torres plus 122. So Tecia-Torres coming off of a 2-year layoff, having a baby. And she's now the wife of a UFC champion. So let's see if that gives her a little bit of a rub here. You know what I'm saying? And Tisha, before her last, little layoff, she was looking good, man. She was on a string of wins. A few dominant wins. Then the Mackenzie Dern fight was razor close, man. I think it was the first and second round where she had a really good argument for winning. A lot of people scored her that fight. I think the last time I watched it, I scored it for Tisha as well. But pardon me, guys, I did not rewatch a Mackenzie Dern fight this week. Pretty simple for me, breaking this one down. If Tisha is able to return to her prior form 2 years ago before the baby, I think that she is going to win the fight. And I think even at this current line, it's Tisha or pass, because Ricci, her wins just are nowhere near the tier of Tisha Torres. You could put women like Jillian Robertson in that same category, who I hold in a high regard, and I think that was a good win for Ricci. However, Jillian is not a good striker, and she was not able to get that fight on the floor. And Tisha is a pretty skilled striker, and I just think that Ricci is not going to have an easy time anywhere in this fight. I don't think Ricci's hitting takedowns here, and when it's on the feet, I think that Torres is one of the better strikers that Ricci has ever fought. So Ricci does fight close. I think she throws so many strikes out there that her fights are going to be close, and she's going to give herself a good shot to win any one of these fights. But I think this line should be a pick'em, and I'll be cheering and predicting Tisha Torres to win by decision. Next fight is in the lightweight division, and boy, oh boy, the next few fights, we have some fucking bangers on our hands. These next 3 fights, I'll try not to spend too much time on them because I could talk about them for a while, but these are some highly anticipated, highly discussed fights this week, and I'm really looking forward to them. We have lightweight division, Esteban-Ribovics taking on Terrence McKinney. Odds for this one have Ribovics minus 160, Terrence McKinney plus 140. So, very, very common sentiment on this fight, I believe, and people think that either McKinney finishes him in the first round or Ribovics takes over and drowns him late, because Terrence McKinney is a one-round fighter. I will always maintain that this guy's a bum. I can't stand Terrence McKinney. I don't like his fighting style. I think the guy's kind of an annoying twat on Twitter as well. And, I like the way Ribovics fights, man. This guy gets after it. You can take him down. He's not really good at defending takedowns, but guess what? He's going to get up and he's going to throw 40, 50 punches at you to steal that round back in his favor. And he debuted, I believe, on short notice, or maybe it wasn't short notice, versus Lewis-Nascimento. And he just showed a lot of guts in that fight. He got taken down 10, 11 times, and he just kept getting up, and he kept, charging at Loic, and he dropped him in the third round. Eventually came up short on a close decision there. And then the same story sort of happened in his last fight against Cam Willa-Kirk, where he got taken down and I believe his back taken in the first round, got taken down and just controlled the whole round. And then the second, third round, he just took it to Kirk, stuffed the takedowns, outboxed him badly. And this guy is just a high volume, high aggression fighter. I love this way this guy fights. And he can go all day. He can go 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Terrence McKinney's whole fighting style is, let me throw some shit at you. Hopefully you get knocked out by it. And if you don't get knocked out by it, I'm fucked. Because this guy just can't deal with adversity. Every time he has an opponent that won't go away easily, he folds. And I think that's what's going to happen here, is that Ribovics is not going to go away, and the Ribovics is going to drown him late. So, sure, McKinney has a chance to finish him in the first round. I would put it around, 25, 30%. I couldn't go above 35%. So, Ribovics under minus 200, I think, is a really good bet. I think, there's a good chance that his true line here is closer to minus 250, minus 300. And hopefully Terrence mixes in the grappling, because if he strikes with Ribovics, I think he's actually more dangerous as a striker, because he clearly has some power, and his knee, his straight left hand, his left kick, they do have power, and they are quick, and they could finish Ribovics here. But if he grapples, I think he's not going to finish Ribovics. He'll take down Ribovics. He might get him in some bad spots, but I ultimately think Ribovics will survive, and McKinney will just burn energy, because I think his grappling just tires him out. We saw the Nazim Sadikov fight, took him down, took us back. Ideal round 1 for him. It went as well as it could have. He won the round easily. And round 2, gas to shit. Absolute gas to shit. This guy just can't fight for more than, 5, 6, 7 minutes. And, I think it's hard to put him anywhere near 40% when he can't fight past a half a fight. So I like Ribovics money line here, -160 for a bigger bet, 1.5 to 2 units. And I also like Ribovics round 2 +650, round 3 +1100. You can mix in that round 2, round 3 KO combo on FanDuel at +550. We're going to be invested in this fight, I tell you what. And if McKinney finishes him early, so be it. We'll get him next time because this guy, I maintain, stinks at MMA. He can't deal with adversity. He can't figure out the fight as it goes. I'll finish you or I quit. So, moving on, lightweight division, Chase Hooper, Vladislav, one of the coolest names on the roster. I wish my name was Vladislav, I think I probably would have had a lot more success in life. Probably would have been doing a fucking MMA podcast if my name were Vladislav, Probably would have been drowning in pussy. Anyway, -140 for Borschev here. Chase Hooper coming back at +120. And another very passionate fight by people this week. I think everyone's picking a side on this one. This is a great fight to pick a side on. Usually I like a little more pick-em odds, but this is a great fight to pick a side on. And clearly one of these guys I think is going to look like a good favorite after this fight. I don't think this is going to be a fight where, it's a split decision. We're not sure who the right side to bet was. I think whoever wins in this fight is going to do it very vividly. And my prediction will be the underdog, Chase Hooper, to do so. I'm going with the grappler here. It's a clear striker versus grappler matchup. However, I think the grappling gap is bigger here than it is for the striking. Chase Hooper is not a good striker. We've seen him get lit up by guys. Steve Garcia rocked him and knocked him out badly in that fight. However, Chase can try to avoid the pocket. He can kick on the outside. He can use his length a little bit to, maintain distance. He's not going to be trying to box with Vladislav Borschev. He's going to be using his strikes to, maintain the distance. And I don't think that the Chase is in, immediate danger on the feet at all times. If it stays on the feet for long periods, yes, he's in danger. But if it's on the feet for 15, 30 seconds at a time, I don't think he's, going down right away. However, once Chase Hooper gets Borschev on the ground, we've seen Borschev just get his guard sliced through, man. I mean, this guy gives up passes. He gives up back takes, mounts. I mean, he is a really bad grappler, a bad wrestler, and an even worse grappler once he gets flat on the mat. And we saw it against Mark Casey. We saw it against Mike Davis. We saw it even in flashes versus Dakota Bush. So I'm going with the wrestling of Chase Hooper here. I just think if he can get his takedowns going, his wrestling is not great. Make no mistake, his wrestling is not great. However, I think the grappling gap once he gets on top is gigantic here, and he is going to be very live to finish Borschev within a minute of this fight hitting the floor. And we saw Hooper, tangle up with Jordan Levitt, who's a solid grappler in his own right. I would honestly say that Jordan Levitt has a good chance at out-wrestling Borschev himself. And Chase Hooper just, sliced through Jordan Levitt on the ground, just proving how skilled of a grappler he is. So, great fight, great matchup there. We are done with the prelims. We are moving on to the main card here, where we have in the heavyweight division Waldo Cortez Acosta taking on Robellis-Despaigne. Odds for this one have Robellis -244, Waldo +209. Robellis needs a nickname. What's this guy's nickname? The Big Boy? That's a shit fucking nickname. It should be the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's definitely been some guy's nickname before. However, the Big Boy is a shit nickname, and he needs a better one. How about the Cuban Cigar, the Cuban Taekwondo Master, the Cuban Phil Halls? I don't know. I'm not here to be creative, but this fight is also very simple. I was talking to my main man Ozzy about this one, and he said something that resonated with me. He said either Waldo is going to be the favorite or he's not, which you might think that's a pretty simple way to look at the fight, and you could say that about most fights. No. Well, I think that's the way to look at this one here, is that either Robelis is going to kill him in the first, few minutes, first round, or Waldo is going to take over and win the fight with his experience, his cardio edge, his, more direct offense with his boxing. And it's going to look really, really clear, I think, where if Waldo is, chasing at him like dumbass Josh Parisian and getting hit with some sloppy punches, then Waldo clearly wasn't the guy equipped to expose Robelis. But if Waldo can just, hopefully tie him up, let Robelis explode with those big combinations and tie him up. I mean, Robelis' last 4 fights have lasted 45 seconds combined. I mean, he is straight spazzing on these guys early on, but he has only had 1 fight that's gone past 20 seconds, and that fight was a very underwhelming look. The Malumba fight, I mean, he gets pushed against the cage there. He does not look like he knows how to defend the clinch. It doesn't look like he's comfortable in, MMA where you're getting put against the fence. And I just think if Waldo can extend this a little bit, there's a super good chance that Robelis just tires the fuck out and completely collapses. There's a good chance that this guy is the next Braxton Smith. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the Braxton Smith UFC debut, and there's a great chance that this guy is just a complete rerun of that. So I bet Waldo at early prices plus 310, plus 200 I think is certainly worth a bet, because this fight is going to curve quick. This isn't a fight I don't think where you can wait on live betting, because Robelis collapsing, I think, could be, instant. It could happen with 1 punch. It could happen after he gasses himself out really quickly. And you got to take the round 2, round 3 for Waldo as well. I think round 2 is where you should put most of your money, because I just have a hard time imagining Waldo being in control in the second round and not getting a finish. It's not like this guy is a nuclear hitter, but I just can't see Robelis keeping it together to make it to a third round. So add some small round 3 Waldo as well. But I would say stick with mostly money line. 80-90% of your bets should be on Waldo money line, because it really could be over in round 1, to be honest. So that's enough about that one. Amazing string of fights here. Moving on to some less compelling ones here. Featherweight division, Sean Woodson, Alex Caceres. Odds for this one have Woodson as the minus 220 favorite, Alex Caceres plus 185. This is going to be a competitive decision. The fight to go the decision is minus 2 something. I think that is hitting. That's probably the best bet of the fight. Minus 215 on FanDuel was the best line I could see. I'm personally not going to be laying the juice. I don't see this one as a good betting opportunity. But I do think Woodson probably wins the decision here. I think he's just got the more consistent offense. Caceres' offense is, very janky. But I could see, Caceres making this close, man. This guy's very often in close fights, and he's never, completely outgunned in there. I think he does a good job at, clinging to any form of life in a fight as he can. He has a pretty good eye for the fight as it's going. I mean, he's extremely experienced, and I think if it's not going his way on the feet, he's going to look to clinch up and maybe get some trip takedowns of some sort. And I do think Caceres is the better grappler of the two. And Woodson's just a horrible finisher. We've seen this guy have opportunities to finish a lot of guys, and he hasn't done it. And Caceres is a bit of the same way. Definitely not a good finisher. So I just see this one being a competitive spar, very low to medium tempo fight that should hit the decision. And it's probably going to be a Woodson decision, but moneyline wise, I think it's definitely a pass. And I really think GTD is the only bet that catches my eye, but I don't know. I just can't get around to this one. No bet on that one. Moving on to the next fight, lightweight division, Carlos Diego Ferreira taking on Mateusz-Rebecki. I call him Rebecki, but I think they pronounce it like Raumbecki. Don't know how the Polish pronunciation works too well. Clearly, Rebecki is minus 400. CDF is plus 300. So been a pretty big fan of CDF throughout his career. He's pretty old now. I thought he looked pretty bad in that Michael Johnson fight before the knockout. 39 years old at lightweight, not a good recipe. He went pro pretty late into his career. He went pro in 2011 when he was fucking, 26 years old. So I don't think the guy has taken, an extreme amount of damage in his career. But I just think the speed and the intensity difference between Rebecki here is going to win Rebecki the fight. 8 years younger for Rebecki. And this guy is just a fucking juggernaut, man. A marauder of sorts, a wrecking ball is what I've called him in the past. Because this guy just attempts nonstop takedowns, nonstop punches, leg kicks. I mean, he just goes at you, and it seems like he could do it pretty hard for the full 15 minutes. And striking wise, I definitely don't think CDF is hanging in here. I think that if any success is happening for Diego in this fight, it's going to be the grappling. The guy is a phenomenal grappler, offensively and defensively. And it would be a huge mistake for Rebecki to shoot takedowns here, because I think Diego is probably going to tie him up, and this guy is just a really, really skilled defensive grappler. The Rustam Khabilov fight from back in the day was a masterful performance of defensive grappling there. Even he held up pretty well against Gregor Gillespie and Beneil Dariush as well. So I think if Rebecki keeps it on the feet and keeps with his strikes, his leg kick, and his big punches, he's probably going to find a way to win the fight. I would lean decision. To be honest, for Rebecki, I haven't looked into the lines too much on this one. Rebecki by decision is plus 250. I think that's the best bet, because Rebecki ITD minus 150, 60%. Carlos Diego Ferreira has only been finished, I think, 2 or 3 times in his career. Let's see, 3 times in his career. The one was to Gamrot, where he injured his rib. Gillespie was, he got gassed out and pounded out, and then Dustin Poirier knocked him out 10 years ago. So I think that's a mistake to say that he's 60% to finish CDF. So the way I'd be looking to play the fight is going with Rebecki by decision plus 250. I do think the money line is wide, but I don't think CDF is actually going to win the fight. Actually, I do have one bet, a collab with my boy Scrap Capper, JT Army, for CDF to win by sub in the second or third round at plus 2,000 or 1,900 or something on FanDuel, because I think him winning the fight is very reliant on Rebecki using a lot of energy early, slowing down, and then CDF having some grappling success in the second or third. So low conviction fight for me there, but I think I am going to bet that Rebecki decision line after looking into that one. We're moving on to the light heavyweight division, where we have Alonzo Menifield taking on Carlos Ulberg here. Odds for this one minus 270 for Carlos Ulberg. Alonzo Menifield plus 230 coming back. So I would say this is not completely striker versus grappler, but I don't think Menifield is having success on the feet here, man. I mean, he's a big, strong, athletic guy, but his striking is pretty, wild and untechnical, while Ulberg is very crisp and powerful with his strikes. And I mean, I think this guy is just getting even more and more comfortable in the MMA cage. He got into the UFC, really, really early. I think he only had like 4 or 5 fights when he first got to the UFC, and you can see him getting more and more confident, and he's been picking up better and better wins. And on the feet, he's going to probably torch Alonzo Menifield here, to be honest. However, if Menifield has the IQ to hit takedowns here, this is where the fight gets interesting, because Ulberg, being a kickboxer, we haven't seen him tested on the ground too much. And, I have severe doubts if this guy is able to defend takedowns or to get up from takedowns. I mean, with his frame and with his kickboxing background and him just being, such a pretty boy, handsome guy from Aotearoa, I just don't see him being a good grappler, to be honest. So, you're kind of gambling on Menifield actually attempting a takedown, but the guy has shown some ability to hit takedowns in fights where, he needed to. The Mojarov fight, it's not like Mojarov was a dangerous striker, but he was like, hey, the easiest way to win this fight is to take this guy down. He instantly double-legged him, smashed him on the ground there, and hopefully he does so here. It's plus 230. I think a small half unit to 3/4 of a unit bet on Menifield is worth it. If he doesn't attempt takedowns, he's gonna get lit up on the feet and he's gonna lose. If he attempts takedowns, man, I think he could potentially make this fight look easy. So I mean, he could hit takedowns in multiple rounds. I wouldn't love that because his cardio isn't super reliable, but he also could just finish him like the first time he gets a takedown, to be honest. So Menifield or pass for sure in terms of this line. Haven't looked at the other props in this fight too much. Over 1.5. No, I'm not interested in anything that I'm seeing on those other lines. Yep, nothing. Just stick with Menifield money line for a small bet. Moving on, co-main event time. Another highly anticipated fight in the welterweight division. Joaquin Buckley taking on Ruziboev. Odds for this one -129 Buckley, +109 Ruziboev. So Ruziboev moving down to 170 here, taking on Buckley, who also recently moved down to 170. Ruziboev though is fucking huge, right? He's like 6'5", isn't he? He's 6'5". He's going to be, 7 or 8 inches taller than Buckley here? Yep, 7 inches taller. It's kind of a similar story as the Billy Goff Trey Waters fight, except this is actually, oh no, it's the same weight class. I'm tripping. But I'm going with the short guy again. I'm going with the Buck. I'm going with Joaquin Buckley. He is the hometown fighter. I believe he's from St. Louis. He was campaigning to get himself as the main event. Probably should have been the main event, honestly, even though Ruziboev has only had 2 fights in the UFC, but nobody wants to see a Derrick Lewis main event. And, I maintain the same opinion I've had on Ruziboev forever. We don't know what quality of fighter this guy is. I mean, he has the record of a fraud, if we're being honest. A ton of first-round finishes. When the fights go out of the first round, his record is pretty bad. And a lot of unknown opponents. And his 2 UFC fights so far haven't taught us shit. They haven't taught us a single fucking thing about him. He caught the leg kick of Bruno Ferreira, landed a punch, knocked him out. That was nice. That was well done. The Dumas fight, I mean, he fucking raked the guy's eyes and then hit him with some punches and knocked him out there. And in that fight, he was just swinging, big uppercuts. He looks to me like a guy who just swings and tries to hit one big punch on the feet. I don't think he has a very consistent offense, as a lot of the Marquez MMA fighters struggle with that. Their striking arsenal on the feet is just not good. They're not comfortable keeping the fight on the feet for long periods, and they kind of unravel when the fight is on the feet for long periods. And Ruziboev has a lot of submissions, but I don't think this guy is a good offensive wrestler. I don't think he has, great jiu-jitsu. I just think he submitted a lot of bums. So we don't know a whole lot about Ruziboev yet. I still think we're learning. And that leaves, big potential for us to be wrong here. However, Joaquin Buckley under 60% is pretty fucking crazy here, in my opinion. I mean, he is so much more experienced against the higher level. We have a so much better of idea of a fighter this guy is. I think he has a cardio advantage. He's been way later in fights way more recently. And honestly, I just think he's going to outbox Ruziboev, man. I think that he's going to get inside, unleash those combinations. He does his typical circle around the cage, then blitz in with some big combinations. And I just don't think Ruziboev is going to, harm him here. And here's the thing. Ruziboev round one knockout, is plus 750 on FanDuel. I think that's the way he wins the fight. I struggle to see a way he wins this fight outside of a round 1 KO. So Joaquin Buckley minus 130 combined with Ruziboev KO 750. That's a very, very guaranteed way to profit on the fight, in my opinion. I think Buck is just gonna probably drown him in the second or third round, possibly even getting a finish in this one. And yeah, I mean, he could have a hairy moment early. He's got to be careful of Ruziboev. I mean, he is a long, athletic motherfucker. And he probably has some power in his hands, but he's dropping down in weight here. He has a really quick turnaround. He hasn't been late in a fight in so long. And man, the last time he went out of round 1 was in 2019. And of course he lost that fight. So, I mean, his record in decisions is 2-6. So I just think everything points to Ruziboev being a guy who massively slows down. And if Buckley can survive that early storm, I think he's going to, run away with it in the second and third. So we're going with the hometown fighter in Buck, and we're moving on to the main event. I have bet Buckley moneyline, by the way, minus 130 for almost, I think it's to win 1.5 units. But man, I really like that combo I was talking about. Buck moneyline, Ruziboev KO 1. Main event time, Derrick St. Louis, people are calling him this week. Rodrigo Nascimento in the main event. Derrick Lewis minus 170, Rodrigo Nascimento plus 145. Man, this is some bleak shit. And there was a quote, I'm going to bring it up every time Derrick Lewis is in the main event. There was a quote from after Derrick Lewis knocked out Chris Daukaus. He says something along the lines of, y'all got me fucked up with this 5 rounds. I don't want to be main event. I don't want to fight 5 rounds. Just give me 3 rounds. And since then, the UFC has given him, this will be his 3rd main event. So, don't really understand what they're doing. Derrick Lewis should be the middle of a pay-per-view. He should kick off a pay-per-view. He should be the 3rd fight on a pay-per-view. Keep it nice and light, give him easy matchups and, let him knock some guy out. The crowd goes crazy and everybody else has a good event. Him being in a 5-round fight is just asinine. It really is. And we saw that in the last fight against Jailton Almeida. Just an absolute bum fight where Jailton took him down over and over again and kept him down every single time and somehow couldn't finish him. And we saw that one of the worst 25-minute main events ever. That fight was literally like Randy Couture versus Tim Sylvia 17 years after the fact that happened. So, this is the fight I probably have looked into the least on the entire card. I guess Derrick Lewis is going to win. He's probably going to knock Nascimento out. I mean, Nascimento, if he keeps it on the feet, he's not a really good striker. I mean, Chris Daukaus knocked him out after all. And he's won some fights on the feet recently. Latifi, he kept out one standing for the most part. Dontel Mays, he outstruck. But, man, I just don't think he's beating Derrick Lewis on the feet here. I mean, I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think eventually Derrick Lewis's power and his boxing is going to clip Nascimento with a shot, and Rodrigo is going to go down. So if Nascimento wants to win the fight, he's going to need to get the fight on the floor. But I don't think this guy's wrestling is that good. And he took down Dontel Mays twice in the first fight. He took down Tanner Bosser 3 times. But in his past 5 fights, he hasn't hit a takedown in 4 of them. And sometimes it's matchup dependent. Sometimes he doesn't really have to take these guys down. But, man, I don't know. I just don't really trust the wrestling of Nascimento. But, potentially if he does hit that takedown here, we know Derrick Lewis is an absolute bum on bottom. And there's a great chance that Nascimento, could finish the fight with 1 takedown. So, I think laying juice on Derrick Lewis is fucking stupid. I do think that he will win the fight. I hope he wins the fight because, that would just be funnier than actually, I have no preference on who wins this fight. I think it would be hilarious either way. And just no real betting takes either, man. I mean, what Nascimento by sub 300? I don't know, man. Just nothing of interest in this one for me. Just a totally uninteresting fight. Don't know why that one is main event. But compelling fights throughout the rest of the card, luckily. I mean, I like a lot of other fights and bets on this card. I'm going to run through them again, as I've been doing lately. J.J. Aldrich moneyline, Gooden-Jousset by round 3 or decision. Look to live bet Charles Johnson, Billy Goff moneyline. Pass on the Torres fight, but I got Torres by decision there. Ribovics moneyline, Ribovics round 2, round 3, and the round 2, round 3 knockout combo prop. Chase Hooper moneyline. Haven't looked into any submission props on him, but they are likely good. I mean, I think they're plus 300. I mean, if he's winning the fight, Chase Hooper, that submission prop is going to be looking pretty damn good, I imagine. So, it's down to, it's still 300 on some books, but no, I'm just going to stick with moneyline there. It could be ground and pound from Hooper if he gets on top as well. I like Waldo moneyline, Waldo round 2, round 3. Pass on the Caceres-Woodson fight, although I do think that one is very, very likely to go to the decision. I got CDF sub 2-3 and Rebecki by decision. Small bet Alonzo Menifield. If he wins the fight, he's going to be Alonzo Menifield. But Alonzo Menifield moneyline, Joaquin Buckley moneyline combined with Ruziboev round 1 KO. And no bet on the main event. Although I'll go with a prediction of Derrick Lewis by round 1 knockout. So that's going to do it. I believe we're off from the UFC next week. Oh, no, not next week. We have a card next week, Barbosa versus Murphy, and then there's a week off after that. But thank you all for tuning in. As always, hope you all enjoyed the podcast, got some good, valuable information, and I hope you all enjoyed the fights and win some bets this weekend. We'll see you all before the next UFC event next week. Peace out.